Are we on time or are we on time?
We are on time.
Me
Hey,
hovering over the go live button.
exactly. No kidding. No kidding. Literally hovering right over it. Yep.
Literally.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Forensic Intent. I'm Scott with Dr. Rachel, and
Hey.
hello, we are here tonight. We've got a really special guest tonight that we're really excited to have on the show. Tonight, we're going to be talking with Jennifer Coffindaffer. She's formerly from the FBI. Jen and I kind of struck up a friendship here a while back, and she's just got a world of knowledge on what we're going to be talking about tonight, and pretty much anything you want to talk with her about. So, a little bit of bio on Jen. She served for 28 years in federal law enforcement. During that time in the FBI, she specialized in organized crime and she specialized in violent crime. She is currently an expert witness for the Eagle Security Group. She is a News Nation contributor. In fact, after our show tonight, that's where she's going to be going for a while. And she also is the host of the podcast Break the Case with Jen Coffindaffer, FBI, which is on YouTube. And if you guys have not checked that podcast out, that's a good one to check out. Lots of knowledge, some good full-length videos, and some shorts. So let's bring Jen in and go from there.
Hi, everyone. Good to be
Hey.
here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Scott and Rachel. Really appreciate the invite.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. It's an honor to have you. And so thank you so much. I just wanted to do a quick disclaimer to everyone. There is a thing scrolling across the screen here. Tonight, some of the things that we talk about may be a little bit graphic. We'll just see where it goes because we're going to be discussing the Idaho 4 homicides in Moscow, Idaho. Before we jump right into that, though, I do want to make mention of a case that's currently going on with a little who is missing in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. I told some people I would put this on our show tonight. So real quickly, this little boy's name is Elijah Vue, V-U-E, as in Victor Union Edward. He has been missing since February 20. He was reported missing by his, I don't know if it's mom's boyfriend or if it's like a babysitter, but it's some kind of friend of mom who reported him missing. End result is mom and boyfriend are now in jail charged with felony child neglect. And Elijah still has not been found yet. He is 3 years old. He is 3 feet tall. He is Hmong and white ethnicity, 45 pounds. And yeah, if you do see him or if there's anyone out there that's listening to this tonight that knows something about the disappearance, contact the Two Rivers, Wisconsin Police Department. That number 920-793-1191. And so let's jump into what our main topic. So we're going to be discussing the Idaho homicides tonight. So let's jump back to November 13th of 2022. 4 students, Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, all brutally murdered at around 4 o'clock in the morning in their home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Currently, there's a suspect in custody, and that is Brian Koberger, as many of you know. This case is a hot one, you guys. I mean, it goes back and forth. There's a lot of people that think he was framed. There's a lot of people that think he's the guy. So, Jen, I'm going to just kind of start with you and let you kind of just take us through some of your knowledge on the case. I know you have a lot of it, and I know there's going to be questions coming in.
Well, this case is something that, other than maybe Gabby Petito, I think the Idaho 4 case has gripped this nation and really international interest in this case like really no other. Why? I think is pretty easy. Our hearts go out, our heartstrings are pulled when you look at 4 young, excited, ready to take the world on students who had their lives not just snuffed out, but really viciously stabbed to death. We don't know all of the details, but I would expect you're going to see slit throats and multiple stab wounds on these individuals, and really just an absolute reckoning that took place at 1122 King Road. on the early morning hours of the 13th. So, unfortunately, I think due to the viciousness as well as the sweetness and excitement of these students, the nation's been gripped.
Yeah, it really has. And, there's been a lot of, oh my gosh, Jennifer, I mean, I don't have to tell you, we've talked about this case. There's been a lot of speculation out there that the police planted evidence. There's the whole thing with Brian's DNA being on the knife sheath. There's the cell phone pings that some people are saying are not reliable and some people are saying are reliable. So what's your take on, let's start with the DNA evidence and the cell phone pings. What's your thoughts on those?
So let's start with the DNA evidence.
Okay.
First of all, we know that there was a knife sheath that was found kind of below and to the side of Maddie Mogen. We believe that Maddie Mogen was the first to be murdered. I believe she was asleep. And then second, Katie Gonsalves was murdered. They were both found in the same bed. You may recall that Kaylee Gonsalves was really moved out. She was ready to start her life and her career and had already really exited from the residence. But there were some activities on this particular weekend, and she had just bought a new car. So she was excited to show off her car and to see her friends really for probably the last time in a long time on this evening. And so in any event, that's where the knife sheath was found. Now, anybody who is speculating, and really it's beyond speculation, Scott and Rachel, it's really just a gross aberration of facts that this sheath was planted. It's just, quite frankly, ludicrous. I always tell everyone, if you want to know the facts around this case, you need to go to the probable cause affidavit that is on file, that I have a click of my finger on my phone or right on my home screen. So whenever I make a comment, I quickly refer to that. I even have it on word search, because that is the bedrock of the facts we know in the public. And anything outside of that, there is source information. And I will say, I believe in a lot of source information. I never cite my sources or repeat their information, but a lot of newscasters do. And I can tell you that it's my belief that someone like Brian Inton, someone like Chris Cuomo, Ashley Banfield, they are not going to disrupt their reputations to just make up information. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you would expect people who have been in the media arena for decades to have great informants that they've met over the years in law enforcement and in prosecutor's office and in defender's offices and so on. So it's not unusual. It's since the beginning of time, reporters have had great informants. And while I rely on the reported information and then say, when, for instance, when I'm contributing, what that information means to the case, I'm relying on what they believe to be true. But to people's points, it is true that they're also relying on their informants to be honest with what they bring forward. So there is this level of uncertainty, and I understand that. And that's why I always say, refer to the probable cause affidavit, because you have an officer who has sworn that this information is accurate. You have very detailed information in this instance as to what was found. So the knife sheath undoubtedly was found there. Think about what it would take to plant something. Let me go through a couple scenarios. We know that the call that came into police was late. And so some people say, well, maybe the kids that were in and around that scene, maybe they came in and planted a knife sheath. Please think about that, everyone. You have 4 kids, 2 that you're probably going to have to, walk past, and then 2 that are laying there. And you really think these college-age kids are going to run into this crime scene,
Right.
see something more graphic and horrific than most people have ever seen in their life? Let me tell
Right.
you, the first time you see a horrifically murdered body, you can never unsee it.
And your friends at that. These aren't just random people. They're your friends. Yeah.
Yeah. It's absurd to think that they would have any motive to frame somebody.
Mm.
Secondarily, why would they be framing Brian Koberger, a PhD student at, Washington State University?
Right.
No, it's ridiculous. Then you just say now you're going to say that somebody really took it upon themselves to plant this sheath. How in the world did Brian Koberger's DNA get on it? It's absurd to think that they somehow got to this knife sheath that he somehow touched and planted it. It's absurd. And then let's take it another direction. Law enforcement. Why in the world would law enforcement want to go after Brian Koberger? And
Right.
again, how does this knife sheath initially have the DNA? I mean, I've heard some of the most ridiculous things ever. Like, oh, well, he was shopping at Walmart, picked up a K-bar and looked at it, put it back on the shelf, and then somebody else got that K-bar, and that just happened to be the one that was in there doing the murder. So there is no scenario, none. And I think
Right.
I've thought through everyone, Scott and Rachel, you might have thought,
Yeah.
that makes any sense that the knife sheath was planted with Brian Koberger's DNA.
Right. And the
No.
planting, I'm not sure. I think if I'm trying to think like other people, not my own thoughts here. However, people will say, well, law enforcement was so hard pressed to solve this. They just wanted someone, anyone. It didn't matter. And so however they ended up coming to this conclusion, they could spin it however they want. It sort of seemed like maybe it was this guy. And so they went with it and spun everything is sort of what I hear people
Yeah.
that are,
Yeah. What I think on this, Jen, and I have my own theory, and Rachel, I think that he was surprised by who was there at the house. First of all, I don't think, as you mentioned earlier, I don't think he expected Kaylee Gonzalez to be there. She had moved out. I don't think he expected Ethan Chapin to be there. Ethan just happened to stay the night that night. And what I think happened is I think he got so caught up in the frenzy of doing what he was doing, killing these people, that he just slipped up and just left that sheath there. That's what I think happened. Exactly.
When Dr. Bercado was on your show with you, Jennifer, and talking about just sort of even in some of Brian's posts from before and talking about his mental health, the dissociative states that he experienced even before being accused of this crime and how that could play into, especially surprise, but and also the adrenaline and just the whole situation, that it would be very easy for him to slip up if that was the state that he was in.
Absolutely.
It's not even a slip up per se. It's a slip up that the slip up came when he did not secure it on his person. He likely had it in a pocket, or if he didn't have coveralls, if he had pants stuffed in his pant waistband. And a lot of people don't understand why that would happen. And that's because they don't handle large knives. I could tell you on the SWAT team, we all had our large knives. And whenever you have a knife, it's crucial that you have a sheath because they are so dangerous. You can't risk ever gripping and slicing your fingers off with your grip. So when you unmount, if you will, your knife, you take it out of the sheath. This is the way you take it out. If you have it on your waistband, affixed, it's very awkward. You're reaching down, you're trying to get it up. If anybody's ever handled a K-bar knife, which is like a Marine grade military knife, these sheaths are tight. This is not like simple in and out. This is force and intentional. So to pull it out of the waistband with the sheath it's tough. And anyway, as he was entering, I believe he would have had it in his hand on the ready and then pulled it, put it either in the waistband, or if he had cargo type situation, put it in that cargo pant on the side, and then began to massacre. And in the frenzy of all that, there's so much going on, and with two victims, although I think Maddie Mogan, there was probably no fight. It was just a simple, probably not very many knife moves to incapacitate. And then Kaylee, because it's been reported, that she was actually more cornered and had defensive wounds and had more wounds, perhaps she actually was awake and struggled and was really, really massacred that night. And you can imagine in the frenzy of all that, just picture yourself on that bed, leaning over on your knees, the height he was, the struggle that went on. And, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people in the forensic psychology, there's no one that thinks that this crime occurred other than for really down deep a sexual motivation, that this was something that excited him, something he could think about, something he would take a souvenir, with him, something that meant a lot to him. Again,
absolutely.
Assuming if it was Brian Kohberger. So could he have been, and believe me, this has been talked about within many law enforcement circles that I've been involved in, could he have even been trying to have some form or state of undress at that point? It's possible.
Yeah.
So there's many reasons why that knife sheath would have dislodged from his person without him knowing it.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, Jen, can you talk about the cell phone piece for just a minute, the pings, and, how reliable? I know a lot of viewers are hearing, a lot of our audience is probably hearing both. It's reliable, it's not reliable. I mean, it's been used now for quite a while. So what's your take on that?
The first thing I would ask anybody that thinks it's unreliable is to go and revisit the Murdaugh trial, particularly go in with the cast agent who's a supervisor, who's amazing, been an FBI agent forever, and his life work and his devotion and his service to the FBI has been digital forensic analysis of cellular telephones. Like, this is his bailiwick. This is what he does. And he's amazing. I would ask anybody who has any doubts, watch that footage. It was a trial. You can see every word out of his mouth. And then I think a light will come on for many people, and they will understand this is scientific, particularly if there's 3 towers and a triangulation is achieved, which is what we understand was the situation in Moscow at 1122 King Road, in and around there. So while they will have experts, just like they did in Murdaugh and like they do in all these trials, to go up against it, I say good luck. Because
that's what I was wondering too, because the other side saying, cell phone data is unreliable, you can't trust it. But then recently with this new alibi, they're referencing how there's all this cell phone data that now puts him somewhere else during this time. These are the same people saying cell phone data is unreliable. So which is it? And Jay just commented that cell phone data nailed Murdaugh. And yeah, he's right. In a lot of cases, it's very relevant.
Rachel, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think this was a huge tactical error on behalf of Brian Kohberger and the defense team to have this be the alibi. Because first of all, it really corroborates now. It's saying even they believe that Brian Kohberger was out and about during these morning hours, and that indeed the cell phone information was reliable. And This is the reason, though, because he likes to stargaze and look at moons and, hike, I don't know, get in touch with nature, whatever. That's the general gist of it all at these ridiculously early morning hours, bewitching hours, they call them. So in any event, I agree with you, Rachel. They've sort of now said, okay, wait a minute, we are going to believe it. And I think the reason was, Rachel and Scott, they had nothing else they could say. This information is so damning and so reliable and so scientific that it's going to put him there. So they have to give a reason why. Now, they've obviously pivoted and they're trying to say now, well, we're going to show him, though, in another place. So I think that 2-hour window, they're not going to be able to explain, right, when the cell phone was down. But it seems to me that they're going to try to show he was in some other part than this other, the cast team puts him in. I say good luck with that. I've seen it many times, and there's no expert that can beat these guys.
Yeah.
Very good.
We have a really good question. How do you believe he did all of this in such a short period of time? And now with the possible state of undress theory you're bringing up, it says these murders would have to have been a lot more structured to get in and out. What are your thoughts about that?
It's so interesting. And I know this has been a sticking point for so many people. Just excuse me. I'm going to look.
Did you fix your glasses?
No, I have another pair on right now because my glasses broke. And I didn't care, man. I was upset about Sebastian Rogers, and I was going on with my hair a hot mess. And
I laughed, but not at you, because that was totally me. Usually with my glasses broken and awry. So
they always break on one side. It's so weird. It must be how I handle them. But by 4:20 estimation, he was gone. By 4:04, he enters. Okay, so that's our time frame we're working with. Okay, so I just want to tell you, in that amount of time, just let's pare it down to 10 minutes. I would believe that in your audience, there's people that could run close to 2 miles in 10 minutes. Just think about that. Could take off people who run 5.5-minute miles, even 6-minute miles.
Not me.
You can go a long way. So just think of that in your mind, think about what a mile is, mark it off, and he could have gone almost 2 miles. We know that his running pace was in the 6-minute or so mile mark because we have that Strava information. I posted it on my Twitter. And so we know how fast he could run, about 6-minute miles. And that was just on this particular run. This is my point is that so much can be done. I want to ask the audience, how many of you have ever been a wrestler or ever watched your child, your nephew, or watched a legitimate wrestling meet? I'm not talking about WWF. I'm talking about a high school or college meet. They have periods that are 2 minutes long. It's unbelievable what happens in 2 minutes. You have pins, you have people getting free. It's an eternity. My son wrestled, my other son wrestled. It's like, as a mother, it seems like it's an hour. It's 2 minutes. So much can happen. I also want to know if any people have ever been in a fight. I've been in a fight, and I can tell you multiple fights, and 20 seconds is a long time. It's an eternity.
Yes.
You get somebody under control in 20 seconds. You better get them under control, or you're going to be mincemeat, at least if you're my size. So this amount of time in the fight world, in the wrestling world, in the athletic world, in the murder world, in the stabbing world is an eternity that he had.
And I think if you were to set a timer for 10 minutes and just sit there and let the timer go and actually see how long 10 minutes is, I think it's totally doable in that amount of time.
It is.
Oh,
I mean,
it's completely doable. It's not even like I said, to me, it's an eternity. It's an eternity for a crime like this. He had plenty of time.
So, Jen, I want to bring up a question, and I'm just going to ask you first if you're comfortable talking about this piece, and if you're not, I'm not even going to go there. But the dog and the rabbit that were killed weeks, are you comfortable going there on that?
100%.
Okay, me too. So for those of you in the audience that don't know, I think Jennifer, was it about 3 weeks before the murders, basically? Okay, so about 3 weeks before the murders, there was a couple that lived about 2 to 3 miles from the crime scene on King Road. Okay, they lived in a house by themselves. They had a dog. So they go out and they find one day they find a rabbit who had been decapitated. Okay, sorry, this is where it gets a little graphic too. And then a few days or maybe a week later, they let their dog out, and their dog is found later by them when they go to retrieve him to bring him back in the house. He was found killed and actually filleted, like he was going to be prepared to be eaten. My opinion is, and I'm just going to put it out there, this is my opinion, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm right, you guys, but I think there's got to be a pretty good chance that may be related. Jen, what do you think?
Okay, so when this all first came out, actually did a lot of research on this. I got the police reports, read the police reports. The bottom line is, I don't think it's related at all. I think it was a situation amongst neighbors. If this were just say somebody like if Brian Kohberger is this murderer and capable of this, in other words, like a Dahmer or a Bundy or many of the other people that abused animals prior to them committing serial killings, this is very personal and enjoyable for them. There is no way you would take what you just mutilated and enjoyed and throw it back on the lawn of the person. So they had animals they kept to themselves. They had roadkill, that they would investigate. So I don't think the modus operandi fits what somebody who mutilates animals in preparation for mutilating people would do, A. And B, I know and I truly believe that was something probably between neighbors. Whether they were able to charge or not was another instance, but there were issues.
Very good. I'm glad I asked you that one.
Yeah, it does seem like if that was a way that he wanted to taunt, that it would be taunting the people he ended up killing, not the neighbor who they may or may not even hear about it having happened. Yeah.
Now that makes sense to me. I was kind of looking at it more from an angle of practice, if you will, new knife, what can the knife, that sort of thing. That's the road I was taking, but I'm really glad I asked you that, Jen, because that does make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And believe me, I think he practiced with that knife. I don't think he put his DNA anywhere near that knife on the night of these murders. I don't think that's what happened, or that sheath. I think what happened was he practiced taking that out. He practiced unsnapping it because it's very difficult. Anybody who has any question about this, go on Amazon, order the knife that we believe he ordered, or law enforcement believes he ordered. In one of my tweets, I nailed down the top knives that they think he ordered. That they focused in on the search warrants. I went through why they had narrowed it down. They said, no, we just want to concentrate on these. Amazon, order one of those knives and pop that snap. It's hard.
Yeah.
This is not like,
well, there are worse things on my search history, I suppose.
That knife, see how hard it is to unsheath it. See what it's like if you affixed it. And I think it fully explains why he committed the murder in this way. If it's him. And so anyway, I think that's where his DNA got on it, was all those repetitions of unsnapping, snapping, unsnapping, snapping. And I think that's why, luckily, DNA was left behind.
I have a question, if we can jump back real quick to the cell phone situation. The defense, I don't believe, made any mention of why the cell phone was turned off in that 2-hour period of time, or that period of time during when we know the murders occurred. Do you like, how are they going to use that? I mean, how in the world could they explain that, I guess? I'm
Well,
not clear on that.
I find it interesting that it's taken them all this time, a year and a half, to even come up with an alibi. I
Yeah.
mean, this should, remember, you know, supposedly singing from the rooftops, telling people, I'm going to be exonerated. I can't wait. We're not hearing any of that, right?
Right.
We're hearing through the attorneys, finally, after pulling teeth at the last minute when it was due on the 17th, finally, again, after talking about it earlier, and then now they've said their witness, right? That was the big thing we were waiting on. We've known that this was going to be his alibi for a long time. They brought that out long ago. But in this particular paperwork to the court, they specifically say who our witness is now. So now we have the cell expert and the why. Stargazing, moon gazing.
Right.
So they don't really get into specificity, and they kind of keep that dangling out there, right? They say words to the effect of, we even have exculpatory evidence. You know, they say that we're going to have something exculpatory. So I don't think they're cell expert. You know, this is the thing about experts. And I don't know this guy particularly. I know, I saw a few things about him that were, you know, giving me a little pause, but I know he's normally a prosecutor's guy. Listen, he wants to be an expert on this case, just like everybody else that was, could be a cell expert. They wanted, you know, pick me, my lord, for those of you who watch Shrek. So I think that this is an opportunity to build one's business, to get your name out there. Oh my gosh, I was the expert witness, unless it all fizzles down and he's made to look very bad, like the other defense expert witness, exactly what happened to her on the genetic genealogy, which was a complete disaster. And she backtracked. I didn't mean to sign that. And can I take back really what I said? And, you know, and then there was, instead of a true DNA genetic genealogy expert, I think it was a completely different kind of science. She was self-taught. I could go on and on, but basically those experts were made to look so bad in court, I thought. And it was bad. Yeah. So will this guy be made to look bad? It's possible, because when you start, if you don't really believe in your stance, and for many experts, people are too old. They do not want to ruin their reputation for, you know, $30,000, $40,000. No. They can move on to the next case that they believe in and can give a true expert opinion.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to be interested to see what he really ends up staking his reputation on.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think sorry, Scott, real quick.
No, go ahead.
My whole take on that alibi was, at the very end, we have information we want from the prosecution. If we get that, we'll give you the rest of what we have. I think that was the whole point. I'm not even sure that they actually have this expert for sure, or that they believe this expert will be very helpful. I really thought the point was to try and manipulate for the state to be like, oh, shoot, you know, what if they have something? We need all of the information, but now we can't get it unless we hand over the other stuff. I just felt like this was just such a game that I'm not sure how much the defense even really believes in their own alibi sticking, if you know what I mean.
I'll agree with you on this. I think they gave themselves an out. That, in other words, if we get more information that we're seeking and our expert says this doesn't support his cellular, you know, digital footprint theory, then we have an out now. Oh, well, he was supportive of it, but he really didn't have the full picture of digital evidence. So now Yeah,
Ah,
we're going in a different
Mhm.
direction. That's
that's
how I see
interesting.
that. There's a little caveat we always put on our reports, and that is once you've read everything that you
Mhm.
have, if more discovery is produced, especially during deposition phases, that you find out things you never knew before, you give yourself an out and you
Yeah.
write in there, hey, listen, this is how things stand with what I have before me. But if it changes and if it's supplemented, I have the ability to change my opinion.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I put that on my reports too. Because it's true. I mean, it's true. They try to throw stuff at you while you're on the stand that you're like, I had no idea that that happened. That would have been good to know 6 months ago, right? So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So I have one last question on this, and then I don't know if Rach has anything else on it, but eventually I think we need to move on to the Tennessee gun piece too, real
yeah,
quick, because I
yeah.
know, Jen, you have to be out of here in like 20 minutes. So, $1 million question, surviving roommates. People are saying, why in the world would it take them so long to call the police? And I know you and I have talked about this. I know kind of know what you're going to say, but please talk to our audience about it.
So Bethany Funk was on the first floor, and by all accounts, at least we don't see her mentioned in an affidavit. But remember, the probable cause affidavit is such a small amount of what truly the prosecutor has. In fact, I have to tell you, I can't even think of an instance where I've seen over a 25-page probable cause affidavit. It's extremely rare. They don't need to go into all that information to prove to show probable cause. This is a probable cause plus affidavit. So they didn't need to talk about what Bethany did or did not say. It's possible Bethany saw nothing
Mhm.
or heard nothing. And it's going to really start up more after, in the morning hours when they came to learn about what happened. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of information that Bethany provides at that point.
Mhm.
So, and I think that that's why the whole situation with her being interviewed by the defense was, certainly would have been problematic for the prosecution from the standpoint of um, you never want to have witnesses in a case be forced to provide a deposition prior to trial. This is why she's already given statements that they're going to have. And the time to cross-examine these witnesses is at trial. They shouldn't have to be on trial,
Right.
and have to go through what they're going to have to go through multiple times. Okay, Dylan. I think though, what the big question you're really getting to, Scott, which is the juicy question,
Mhm.
is why in the world did Dylan and Bethany, at the time they discovered the bodies or that something horrific had happened, why didn't they call earlier? How could it possibly take all those hours?
Right.
And I think the big answer to that is we don't know. They have not released the 911 tape. We know it wasn't one of the roommates that made the call. Supposedly, one of the roommates was passed out. From shock, supposedly. That is what has been said. I don't know if that's true because it's not in the PCA. It's just amongst the people talking about it that were supposedly there that leaked out. But in any event, Scott, we don't know why. We don't know if they stayed in their bedrooms for hours because they were passed out because of all their partying the night before. We know they were partying. We
Absolutely.
Right.
knew they were under the influence. There's just no question about that.
Right.
And, at what point are you finally going to sleep and then you sleep? And at what point did they wake up? And then at the point that they wake up, at what point did they see the bodies? And then after they saw the bodies, it would make sense to me that Dylan could have seen them first, but Bethany could have walked up and seen Xana and then ran in and awoken Dylan. We just don't know the
Mhm.
imaginations of really what happened during that time frame. It's going to be crucial. I can't wait to hear what happened. But What I don't think happened was anything sinister. I think it was panic. I think it was absolute disbelief. I think it was a state of shock, which for people who don't understand shock is the lack of perfusion throughout the body, oxygenated blood, because the body literally starts to shut down and stop perfusing properly. And people go into shock. And I think that that is likely in large part what occurred. And you have kids that made dumb decisions and who apparently called friends and didn't do what they should have done.
Very good. Well, thank you for answering that. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So, Ray, should we move on to Tennessee?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for those of you who may not be aware of this, Tennessee just recently passed a bill that will now allow teachers to eventually carry concealed weapons. And I read it today. It sounds like it might even be allowed on their person in the schools, beginning whenever that begins. There's a certain amount of training that they have to go through to do that. And this is not something that's new. I researched it today, and there are actually more states than I thought that do allow carrying in the schools. So that was kind of a wake up call to me. Iowa just also passed a bill. So I guess, Jen, what I was wondering, your take on this is kind of a broad question, but you'll know where I'm coming from on it. So where do you see this going? First of all, what's your opinion on teachers carrying handguns in the schools? And do you think ultimately this will become a national trend?
So, number one, I am not going to have a popular opinion, but I'm going to speak from the heart and how I feel about this. This reminds me so much of the hoopla that was made when pilots began carrying firearms after 9/11. And everybody said, oh my gosh, we've got pilots that are going to be armed on planes and they're going to come out shooting. And, what happens if there's a misfire and it goes through the cabin area? And,
And I'm just thinking, I don't want my pilot getting up out of their seat. That was the first thing. What are they doing with a weapon? They can't get out of their seat and come back here.
Right. Of course, it's for if somebody enters where they are.
Right.
That they could shoot that person. And then I always thought that was so funny too, because they are basically, flying around a gigantic bomb that all they have to do is crash it into something and they can kill everybody. So who cares about a 9mm?
Well, that's a good point.
So in any event, it reminds me a little bit of that in terms of the sentiment. Now, are there some crazy pilots? There's some. We saw a case like that recently where the guy said he was on mushrooms and tried to crash the plane. It was a hot mess. He wasn't the one at the controls, but he was the one in the jump seat in the cockpit that was, jump seating, or deadheading, they call it. But the question is, I think that I totally agree with it within parameters. I think that the training has to be extensive. When I say extensive, like full 40-hour, 5-day, 8-hour training a day, a full week of that. And I think they need to have refresher courses at least once a year that are shorter, if not every 6 months.
And that's what's proposed on that bill. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, is it that extensive?
It is, Jen. It's two types of training. It's 40 hours of policing as it relates to schools, and then it's 40 hours of police training that deals with, kind of worded the same way, deals with schools, but it has to be paid by the person themselves. It's at their own expense, and it has to be repeated every year.
Perfect.
Yes.
Then I really do support this. And the particular kind of training they need to be taking is shoot, don't shoot scenarios. This is something I teach with Firearms Beyond International when I do a class, and I hire individuals to be role players, just like we did in Quantico. I run it just like Quantico, that you're in a scenario such as you're in a park, you're jogging, You had your gun because you've heard about people being assaulted and you're on a jog. And then I literally have somebody come while they're jogging and attack them, or on a walk if they're walkers. And then they have to make a decision. Is their life in danger? Did they really need to shoot? Or did they give commands? And in other words, stop, and screaming, and did you give the guy a chance to run away? Whatever the case scenario. So in this case, you would want scenarios that you could encounter in schools. And then you also need to make sure during these classes that they have proper marksmanship skills. You don't want somebody with a gun that is a horrible shot, because they could kill a child. So I think it has to be extremely well regulated. I think they have to pass marksmanship tests and do that training. And then I am in support.
Okay, very good. Yeah, they also have to go through background, obviously, and psychological training. They have to get permission from superintendent, all those things. So yeah, I was just really curious on your take.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think what you're going to see is just like with the pilot program, yes, that was all approved, but if you look, so few pilots go through all the required elements. So really just very few pilots in the big scheme of things. And when you think about the number of pilots that are flying commercially, really are packing. Yeah. And then you're going to have the same thing in this teacher element. They're not going to want to pay. It's extremely expensive. Classes cost so much money, because as an instructor, I have to be insured. I insure myself for $3 million. I insure, and then the place that I go, I have to have coverage for that particular location. Then I have to worry about, the instructors that I have to hire to help if I have a class of 10 or a class of more than 10. I have to have somebody out there with me. And then just the range time. Bullets were $50 a dollar each. And you need to be shooting at least 100 rounds a day.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's a lot of money. So I think it's going to be a lot ado about nothing. And the people that really want to be armed that are going to go through it are going to be a small number, and they're going to be good.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
If I were a teacher, I would not. I would not go through it. I would I don't know. Just don't think.
Yeah.
I would be too scared that even if I passed everything, that there would be a situation where I would just make the wrong decision. I just couldn't set myself up for that. But I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be a thing where like troves of teachers are signing up for this.
Right.
And I want to, touch on your point. There was a class. So the name of my class is A Day at Quantico. And Quantico is the FBI Academy where agents train. And so you come in at 7 a.m. and it's straight through. I tell everybody, bring your sack lunch, bring water, and we go straight through 8 hours. We don't have any breaks. I mean, I don't worry. I'm not like a militant or anything, but there's always, it's constant. Even when they're eating, as an example, I'm lecturing about either active shooter or terrorism. I let the class choose their kind of curriculum, and we tailor it to what they're looking for. But anyway, in this class, I had this woman go through, and this class, Quantico for a day is $600 for that 8-hour training per person. And this woman came through, and she was amazing. But in the scenarios, she kept killing innocent people. Because not everybody who approaches you is armed or deserves to be shot. And she would just blow them up. I was like, whoa, 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 because we use paintball and it hurts. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. So, and we use actual sim guns. So they feel and look just like a 9mm. They're not like these big paint guns like you see on ranges. I try to keep it very realistic and in a holster and so forth. So anyway, we talked about it. She'd already had her license to carry, for a long time. It was already carrying. Fast forward next month, I have another class, and I look on my computer, and she pops up again as paying. And I'm like, oh my God, my system accidentally charged her twice. So I call her. Her name was Penny. I'll give you her first name. So I said, Penny, I just saw you, she goes, yeah, I got to take your class again. She goes, I carry all the time. I just can't get over the fact that I killed innocent people during your class. I said, Penny, all right. So she came through again. I thought, okay,
Wow.
shot a totally innocent person that was like a monk going like this. The minute he popped up at her, she just panicked and blew him away. And at the end of class, she said, at the end of the 8 hours, she goes, I'm never carrying my gun again.
Oh,
I don't want anywhere near this thing. She goes, I am not of the mindset or emotionally or mentally. And she was super smart. She was so successful. She said, I can't make good decisions. So to your point, that even if you do have the training, when you're in those moments, I just hope they take classes that put them in those high stress moments, because when you're hit by a paint gun, it hurts. Those paint bullets.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Well, Jen, you're about needing to get out of here, so we should probably let you get on your way.
Yeah. Give you a couple minutes of breathing before you go on to your next thing.
Before you go to the next one. But thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate having you, and I know that our audience really enjoyed having you tonight. And so maybe we can do this again sometime when you have time.
Yeah,
that sounds great. And I hope I didn't talk too much.
No.
These are issues and discussions that I'm very passionate about, because I believe in them, and I would just leave with this one thought, and that is, I'll leave you with 4 thoughts: Xana, Kaylee, Ethan, and Maddie. And the victims are so often, because this is going to continue to drag out years for your listeners. Yes, years, multiple years before we're ever going to see a trial. And the victims end up getting forgotten. And I want to give one quick point on this. For those that are older in your audience, or for the true crimers, Charles Manson. At the time of the Charles Manson killings, Helter Skelter is a good book to read on it. There's multiple documentaries and books on that. The people that were sort of under his tutelage, even though he wasn't there, they massacred the Tates and the LaBiancas.
Yes.
When I say massacred, like 40 stab wounds, cut a baby out, slit their throats, wrote in blood on the walls, ate their food after they did this, stayed in their house, all bloody. And one of those people who did that was Leslie Van Houten. And she had the swastika on her head, and she was the chanter, and she was all in.
Yes.
Even sober. Even with no drugs, she was all in. They were all sentenced to death. Then California commuted the death sentence. So then they all got life without parole. And then you know what happened? They commuted her sentence. They let her out. They let her out about a year ago.
They did. I know.
And Leslie Van Houten is drinking Folgers. Folgers was one of the families that she helped annihilate.
Abby Folger.
She was, she gets to have friends, family. She gets to see sunsets. She gets to be free. Meanwhile, both the LaBiancas, and that's who she was involved in their murders, they were sliced to ribbons. And at that time, that was like the Idaho 4 case.
Right.
I mean, it was astonishing. These were actors, and I mean, Sharon Tate was beautiful.
Yeah.
No one could ever imagine that one of those heathens, I shouldn't say heathen. Somebody explained to me that heathen just means you don't believe in God. That one of those animals, my mom would say heathen, is out right now. And that's why it's so important that we keep the names of these victims out, so that no one forgets what they went through.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's actually spot on. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have a great night, and we will let you get on to your next your next show. And thanks again, Jen. We really enjoyed having you.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me. Thank you,
All
Scott.
right.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks. You
You're
bet.
welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. That was awesome.
That was really good.
That was, I'm sorry if we didn't get to everybody's questions. We didn't have we could talk to her for hours. I feel like I had a couple other things that I wanted to follow up on, but we can't keep her forever, obviously. We'll have to have her back on. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I have to say something really catty, though.
Mm-hmm.
She has the best hair.
Jen, we've kind of been talking about that off and on.
No, I'm like, I love her hair. Darken my hair and make myself look like Jen, freak everybody out.
There you go. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
You guys, we're gonna be switching days starting next week. Rachel's got some scheduling things that are coming up on Fridays with kiddos and theater stuff and so on and so forth. So next week our show is going to be on Wednesday, the 20, whatever Wednesday is.
Yeah.
And I think we're not firmed up on what we're going to discuss yet, but I think we may talk a little bit about the Sebastian Rogers case that's going on in Tennessee and kind of give our perspective on it.
It'll just be me and Scott. We're going to just get us next time.
Yeah, so. Just us. Yep. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, that's a hot case right now. It's a hot mess right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about it almost every day together.
Every day.
We got a lot of thoughts and opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just going nowhere. And if it is going nowhere, if it is going somewhere, they're not saying that. And, I was talking to Rachel today. I have background as a PIO with the police department, a public information officer. And I'm kind of equating what's going on right now in Hendersonville with what I was taught as a PIO in a small police department. When there's a major investigation going on, you've got to give the media some stuff, a little bit. You can't give them all the good stuff. You can't give them anything pertinent to the investigation that could ruin the investigation, but you've got to come up with a story. Because if you don't, they will come up with a story themselves, you guys, and they may spin it in a way that it's not really the way it's going on. And that's kind of equates to what's going on right now in Hendersonville, in my opinion. They're putting out very little. People are speculating till the cows come home, and look at this mess we have. So Rachel, ring in.
Yeah, they're not refuting anything. They're not agreeing with anything. They're not. Am I cutting out?
There you are.
Okay.
You're good now.
Internet. I have the boss looking into fixing our internet issue. Boss / graphic designer. Yay, go Kyle. Anyway, I think they're not confirming anything. They're not refuting anything. So we're just out here with just the general public throwing stuff at the wall. Every day I feel like, oh, okay, this legitimate source said this. And then the next day someone says something completely opposite. And then the legitimate source comes back and says that same thing. And I just, my brain is scrambled over it right now. The cops are not controlling the narrative at all, which is just, I think it's crazy that I can't. I'm going to put this out there just real quick. And then this can be like your, what do they call it? Like your, I don't know what, the cliffhanger.
There we go.
There was something put out by the new PI today that Seth had hired. Just, in my opinion, was very strange and dangerous for the PI and Seth potentially. There are these, I think there's more than one that I've seen people making comments alluding to the idea that they might have Sebastian, like these people on Facebook, like, and I think for the most part everyone's kind of looking at it like these are scammers, they're trying to get money, freak people out and get money out of them. But of course that is like 100% a law enforcement situation. Like they need to decide what to do with that situation. Like no one else should be doing anything with those people at all, for safety reasons, for practical reasons. Maybe law enforcement is taking care of it, but here's the thing. We don't know because they're not saying anything.
Right.
And then Seth's PI is saying she's going to meet up with one of these people. I'm just,
yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. This has been one of the most frustrating cases that I can remember. And I mean, I worked cases for 20 years and I've followed cases. And this case is one of the weirdest cases that I can recall in a while, with all of the misconceptions and misperceptions, all the bad info coming out, all the conspiracies. I mean, and just the lack of info. I told Rachel today when we were talking, I wish, I could go there and see what's being done, because we don't know what's being done, because they're not really saying anything. All they're saying is we're looking. So I don't know. But anyway, you guys, hopefully we're going to approach that on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yes. So
At
join us then.
6:30 Eastern. Is that right, Rachel?
No,
6:30
it's totally
Eastern.
not right at all, actually. I
Okay.
don't think we're doing
Okay.
6:30.
Okay.
I thought it was
That's why I
during the
asked
day.
you.
Well, no, not at all.
We'll put it out there. So it's
Guys.
totally not 6:30. And yeah.
The opposite of 6:30. I
Yeah.
actually have that it's going to be at 2:00 Eastern.
That's right, because it's 11 our time. Okay.
Do the daytime thing and see if you guys are available. And there's always the replay. So we appreciate you guys being here. This is awesome. Thank you to all the other podcasters out there that are supporting us too.
Yeah.
Jay, awesome.
Yep.
Truth and
Yep.
Deliberation. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you,
awesome.
Amy. Thank you, Derek. Yep.
And Lori. And we love you guys. Thank
Love
you.
guys. Thanks to Mike and Tracy for showing up again.
Yes. Yes.
And Sonia.
Thank you so much. And
we miss
Sonia,
Sean.
yes. Sean will be filing charges we're putting out a bolo on Sean. So I'll let you know in our next episode if we find him.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a great night.
Night, guys. Thanks, guys.
Bye.